Hi everyone.
Hi everyone.
What we have for you today is a video on freeing the daughter from the father, and this is important for young men and also for young women too.
It is indeed. There will be young women out there who do need freeing from their fathers, so hopefully it will be of some interest to them as well.
Thanks. Enjoy, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye now. This is it's an anonymous one again, and it's basically the task, which can be very difficult for a young man to actually break the hold of the father, so he can have a relationship. So it's like the mother-son one, but this time it's from the other side. So what we've got here, oddly, are three representations of the feminine. We've got the actual girl herself, and then we've got the father's anima and the boy's anima as well. So there's a triangulation of anima representations, two of which are Platonic, and then there's the one which is shared between them, which is the daughter, who they will see in a different way, where the conflict is occurring, but that's supported, if you like, and driven by the two Platonic forms behind. So there's a great deal in this, and it's an adaptive aspect that we can say that moves on from the divided anima, where a young man is in a relationship, and the young woman wants to be with him, but the hand of the father can be felt pulling her away, and there can be all sorts of reasonable justifications for that from a protective father, but there can also be unreasonable ones as well. And how this is navigated is important, obviously, for establishing any kind of relationship. Because if it isn't navigated properly, then that young girl will bring all of the unresolved relationships she may have had to men in her life, including her father, into the relationship to the young man. And he may be motivated by the very best of intentions from the Platonic form that he taps into on the inside, that causes him to want to have a lifelong relationship with that girl. But she may still be under the influence internally of the father. But there's a different way of looking at it, of course, and the father's actually right, because that young man may not be right himself. So there's so many perspectives to look at. But this is the one that we're thinking about filming tomorrow, if anybody wants to get involved in that one. So it's a common enough scenario that you could call it archetypal in that Jungian sense. It's certainly meta-instinctive, because we're prepared for any number of variations by our evolution. Any number of variations on this possible scenario are all anticipated and are immediately triggered by the configuration as we interpret that to be. And that brings online our instincts accordingly, with Plato being in the background, pushing it.
He's very restrained, the young man, isn't he? In that image.
Yeah, he's restrained. And I mean, when I put it together, then part of the information to put it together is that he has to read the girl's intention and conscious state, her configuration properly, to understand whether he would be forcing her at any level against her own will.
But it's on display, isn't it? Forgive me for being very Freudian about this. I mean, it's a shame Freud's not in the, well, he is there, he is present, but you just can't see him. He never goes away.
Yeah.
But I think this is the state of a lot of modern young women, is that there's often a lot on display to the young man, who is then meant to act in an appropriate way.
I didn't ask for that.
No, I'm sure you. No, I know you didn't. I know you didn't, Steve. But I think it should be pointed out. Well, pointing itself out, doesn't it? We saw. Dare I talk about Roger Moore?
Oh,
was it Maggie Smith?
Yeah, Maddie Smith.
With Maddie Smith, the actress.
If you're in the UK, you'll know. You might know Roger Moore as Maddie
I think
Smith
you probably know Roger Moore is.
Yeah, it was famous, wasn't she, back in the day?
Yes, she was. And there is a similar kind of image or entanglement between her and Roger Moore, who was obviously, he played Bond. He was a really sort of smooth talking charmer, wasn't he? Probably in life as well as in Bond, actually. There's probably quite a bit of crossover. And they were similarly engaged as the young couple are in this picture, but he did not have his hand on her waist, put it that way. And she was not disapproving of it. So in that sense, it was consensual. Neither party were complaining. But I just think it's interesting that there are a lot of young women in this culture who would display, and let's be honest, if you go in a little vest top and a pair of revealing jeans, in effect, it is a sexual display of sorts. And I feel for the young men who are kind of presented with that, to be honest, as to what to know to do about it. And that's why I said the young man in this image appears to be very restrained, and he is. So, and yet the father understands, obviously he does, which is why he's got this tight hold on the back of his daughter's arm, what that might suggest to the young man, because he's been a young man himself once. So he understands completely where this could go for all the wrong reasons. Hence his, tugging at the arm. So there's an awful lot going on here potentially. Some of the things that I've just said would be very unpopular to say in this present zeitgeist, because you'd have to outrightly criticize young women for displaying in that way, and then basically saying to men, but don't look at me, don't objectify me, don't do that to me. That's not allowed. You can look, but you can't touch, and all of that. And all the frustration that might bring online. And if it's a decent young man who did not have that intention anyway, that's one thing. But if it's a predator, in the way that we were talking about earlier, who would absolutely read the signal in the way that it was presented, that could end in a not very nice situation for that young woman. So there's all these things to bear in mind.
Any number of ways of reading it. The father might be an abuser, a controller in any kind of domain.
Yes, absolutely.
But the task of the young man is to read the girl, the girl's attachment to the father. He will know, the young man will know whether it's worth investing the effort that will be necessary to challenge the father. But if the girl is not supporting him in doing it, that's at least difficult, and it may be terminal for the relationship. I mean, the father's an experienced older guy who is bigger physically. He may have a lot of fighting, if you like, behind him, and understanding of these things. If he's going to challenge the father, he better believe that girl is on his side and is not herself divided in any way at all. So the Platonic form behind him is touching his shoulder, as if to meet the touch from the girl. And is the touch of the Platonic and the touch of the girl the same thing, or is there a difference? The gradient in touch will, as he feels it, will be an indication of whether she's for him or not. And not means only a little bit divided. In order to commit to him, she's got to separate from the father. And that's a task for any young man to face. I mean, I faced that with you. And your father's attempt I don't want to bring any of that in, but I'm just saying, for example, that's something that a judgment call that had to be made. I mean, am I going to, stand up here and only to have the girl that I wanted to turn on me in favour of her father now or in the future? I have to be able to read that properly. I have to feel the touch of the Platonic form and yours, and if they're the same, I'm okay.
Well, you did read it properly, as it happens.
But that's just to because I composed the image. And I did that on that understanding that that's what this is about, freeing the daughter from the father, because this is the struggle that a lot of young men have. They might get this far. They've got past their own mother's influence, say, as in the earlier one, and the choice to be made in the street between certain kinds of women. So he's been lucky and he's got a girl that he wants, but does she want him enough?
Or is she predatory?
That exactly.
I mean, there's all of this, isn't there?
Well, there are. I mean, and there's lots of ways. Unfortunately, infidelity just means disloyalty. It doesn't mean necessarily sexual, but infidelity in a commitment to a relationship can be as concealed as carrying the father complex into the relationship, to the extent that it ruins it. That's a form of infidelity to the relationship, because the father is co-present, just like the mother was potentially earlier. So the whole point about the shared touch here, I noticed that the father's Platonic form is only watching, is not touching. So that could give us an understanding of what her view is of this situation, and how integrated is that into the father's psyche that he can make a proper judgment of that relationship. The key is going to be the young girl. She is absolutely the most powerful figure there, because both of the Platonic forms can only instantiate or not within her. And that will be decisive about how the men treat her. So both of those men are making a prediction. And that young man has to know before he commits himself, or he could be walking into a trap. At least that's how, I configured the image, and we'll see when it comes to filming how it works out. But that's the intention behind that one. But you could read it so many ways.
You could indeed.
It's interesting you focused on the girl as well. I was focusing on the young man.
Because I'm again, there's so many people who are absent in this image. But are actually present, including the field of the mother, and how the mother feels about her daughter going out, maybe even dressed in a particular way. And I know it's old-fashioned. I know the zeitgeist wouldn't approve of me saying such things, but I think, when mothers are doing their job properly with their daughters, they do at least consider such things about how that might come across with respect to any young men that they might meet. So, as you say, Steve, this could unpack and unpack and unpack. It could, and there'll be lots but I appreciate that you've configured it in such a way to get a particular point across, and that's valuable in and of itself.
The intention was that this is an existing relationship. He hasn't just picked her up because she's dressed like that off the street.
Sure.
The street is there to show it's the street of life. And in that sense, they should walk into that street and into their own home and establish their future. If the relationship is right. And if it's not, it has to stop now. He has to read that properly. So they're already they're basically engaged in old-fashioned speak, I would say. And it's the father trying to stop that progressing any further. He hasn't just picked her up. He hasn't met her just now in company with a father on the street or picked her up at a nightclub. This is a relationship which could become consolidated. His anima, as in Platonic form, is attempting to test through his body whether what he receives from the girl is congruent with it, and then he can have the best impression on the inside. But the Platonic form is also reading the girl's touch similarly through him, and that will be decisive. But he's not sure. He's looking past the father at his anima.
Which well, if you were to put that into the context of our relationship, would not be a very nice thing.
Who?
Well, my father.
Oh,
my
father.
No. My father's anima I'm talking about, because you mentioned, you put it into the context of our meeting earlier. Yes, my father's anima would not have been a very nice thing at all.
It wasn't.
No, it absolutely wasn't. So, but fortunately, I was sufficiently aware of that to know that I did not want it to have a hold on me, literally, and or metaphorically have any kind of a hold. And so
that was clear. That was clear. That was absolutely clear.
And hopefully that was signaled to you.
Of course.
So what you're saying that where this is a self-contained kind of union, where all the elements present for commitment in a long-term relationship are there, that is we're looking then at a couple who are really a tight unit. And that's a fine thing. But when the young man, as you say, Steve, reads it wrongly, then equally it can produce an awful lot of suffering in equal measure down the road if he doesn't get it right. So
well, it can happen, because couples that start out with a complete relationship apparently to one another, but complexes are latent, and then they emerge under the pressure of living together and growing and maturing. That's when the real pressure comes, but they've got to get past this boundary first, where there is a father figure like that. Now that's the intention of the image, was to encapsulate that. But you're quite right, we can interpret any number of things there. So I interpreted the way she's dressed as being that's someone who's comfortable with the man she's with, and she's doing that for him.
Yeah.
And in defiance of her father's control.
Yeah.
But that's different. But it's also the point you raised is different, but also an alternative perspective on that. Hence the title, Freeing the Daughter from the Father.
Yes.
Not some random guy who turns up on the street and takes the girl off the dad when they're out for a walk together. they're in a relationship.
Yes. Yeah.
So that would be the angle.
Yeah.
That I'd envisioned for that. But like you say, everybody sees different things.
They do.
And the possibility for different things in it.
Yeah.
Just as you saw, and I know that everybody else did, different things in the divided animal configuration.
Yes.
I was more favourable to the mother in that.
You were.
When we discussed it.
Yes, you were. Yes.
Because I was taking the position of what would a mother think of a son who may not be prepared for the world? In other words, was naive despite everything done for him. Who was about to enter the backdrop of that original card.
Yes.
And there are two aspects of the feminine, one of which might be concealed as a predator.
Yes.
How would the mother feel about that? About releasing? That's the positive side of the mother, so that's not overlooked.
Yeah.
The negative side, of course, is she doesn't want him to, and you can infer that from the image. And both such mothers exist in many other configurations. So it's the discussion that makes it worth having, isn't it?
Yes.
These images, which you've pointed out. Yeah.
It's probably, I mean, it's a bit different for you because in some regards you're creating them.
Yeah.
I mean, we discuss them and we share ideas, but you put them together.
Yeah.
So in that sense, you know what you want to convey.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So that's a bit of a collapsed perspective on a very general field of potential interactions. But that's the title: Freeing the Daughter from the Father.
Yes.
Can he do that?
Yeah.
Does she want him to?
Yeah.
Because the not wanting to, where that's present, may not be a conscious attitude that's taken, but a habit in the form of relating to a complex in that way to the masculine as a whole. So some of her instincts and a Platonic field might be saying, yes, then this is the guy I choose, but there's that other presence which has never been properly challenged on the outside, but not the inside. And the inside is out from which the relationship between those two will be worked out as they take their place in one of those houses in the street of life. Right. And that's it. That's where a marriage unfolds or a relationship unfolds over time. And will the father ever be left behind? It depends, doesn't it, on so many aspects.
It does.
And that's one of the challenges for young men, isn't it, as they start their journey. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the one we're going to do tomorrow. If anybody wants to.
Oh no, I might have to absent myself because I might say things that are controversial.
Don't be silly. What do you mean by that?
The things I've already said here today.
Don't be daft.
Yeah, but you know what it's like. Yeah, yeah.
Steve, can I just say something about your man, father's face?
Yeah.
Of an extended field.
It is, yeah.
You know, I mean, I didn't put that revealing image in that way, you know.
Yeah.
I didn't do that.
Sorry, Steve, can I just say something about the father's face and just the way he's looking?
Yeah.
We actually discussed this a couple of mothers not so long ago, just about the father's reaction when a male comes into the household with the daughter. They do have that kind of look. They're not really relating, they're just checking out.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think you
it is.
Yeah, so I think you've encapsulated that perfectly.
Yeah.
That face.
Yes.
Yeah.
Paleolithic face.
Yeah, a father would do that because it should do that.
Yeah.
Independently. Let's hope it's not independent. Let's hope they're of good character and they do it to protect their daughter, to apply pressure to the relationship and then be satisfied. Obviously, an abuser will do exactly the same thing, but for a different motive.
Yeah, of course.
But Yeah. I mean, it's an intense pressure testing stir, isn't it?
Oh yes.
As if to say, if you can take her off me, you can have her, but you can only take her off me if it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So it's all down to her. I mean, the way it was composed was that she should look at him in an almost bewildered sense, as if to say, what's happening? I'm being forced to make a choice here. And I didn't anticipate that would happen, that the outer man will challenge the inner man, that kind of thing. And yeah, but this is the scenario.
Yes.
You
And
see
of
it all
course,
the time.
we do, and it's ritualized in the marriage ceremony too, isn't
It
it?
is.
Into
Yeah.
the idea of
absolutely,
the daughter away. Yeah.
Yeah. I think this imagery is brilliant. I think this is opening a whole different perspective, to be honest.
Thank you, Neve.
Thank you. There's so much to discuss, isn't there?
Yeah. There is. Yeah.
There is indeed. We have got others to look at, so to speak, but that's the one we're going to film in tomorrow, or we intend to, depending on how things go. So that's open to anybody who wants to get involved in that if they wish. You okay there, Ben? Oh yeah, right. Thanks. Yeah. We could have a look at some. Oh yeah, go ahead, Ben.
I'm not wanting to, like spoil the direction you're going in here, and it, again, to me, the daughter's face catches my attention as well. And she's looking to the younger man. At least this is my take on it. In that, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
I hope you do the right thing.
Yeah.
And and so she seems, vulnerable, not in a bad way, in that she is vulnerable to either one of the men's choices at the moment, not as a passive, but more as a challenge in that pressure testing sense of, this is for the younger man, his rite of passage in one sense. And so she's looking to him almost in the sense of, what will my future be like with you?
Yeah.
Depending on this moment, what you're going to do, how you're going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Yeah.
So again, I don't want to, derail the direction.
Oh, no, you're not doing it. No, not at all.
Yeah.
It's a very valuable observation and contribution to the field of the image, and beyond the image itself, the meta instincts that it represents, the adaptations that are necessary. I wanted it to show something that will appear to be either stunned, bewildered, but ambiguity. And the ambiguity I would interpret as being related to what you're saying. Is saying, are you going to free me or not?
Right. So again, the father's hold on the daughter is very firm. And the daughter's touch on the younger man is very firm, but his touch on her seems very tentative.
Yeah.
That's where the face to me comes in, going, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
It's powerful.
Yes, thank you.
Because she has to be able to trust him, the younger man, to walk down the street of life and be, a good provider, protector, et cetera, et cetera. It's a changing of the guards or passing of the baton, but she's looking to him to see, does he have it?
Yeah.
At least, again, sorry, it's
oh no, don't apologize. This is absolutely great. I'm just absorbing what you're saying and feeling into the field behind that, because that's an aspect of what I'd intended, because it is a very complicated situation and it all depends upon motives, and she has to read him more than he has to read her, really, I would say.
And if she gets on with the father, if she does, there may be a desire for the two men to get on as well.
Yeah.
So how the young man handles her father might be important to her as well, going forward. You know, can these two men get on? In which case that might be a really good resolution. But if not, then, you know, her future's that way, isn't it, with the young man and not with her father? So there'll be so much being processed if he's right.
If he's right for it, yeah. So there's always caveats, isn't there? Always.
Yeah.
And that's the problem, isn't it? That's why the myth or mythic representations always contain this kind of conflict about making the right or wrong choices. It's a challenge of life.
Yeah, and again, this may be a mistake on my part here, but you know, the young man's image I'm carrying over from the previous card about the pseudo-androgyny. You know, so if their relationship is based on a pseudo-androgyny on his part, it will be tested. This is where it is. Do you have it or you don't?
Yeah.
That's a great point. With the pseudo-androgyny, it can originate with the father who wanted a son but has a daughter, and even if she looks feminine, he'll do everything he can to blunt that, and then she'll deny it in herself. She can't have it in the persona because her persona beyond appearance, because it's never been confirmed by the father. So if she meets a feminized man who is still obviously a physical man, then she will see her own wholeness in him rather than herself, and that can lead to too strong a dependency through attachment. But is there enough of the masculine in him, you know, to compensate so she can withdraw back her femininity off him? It's no longer projected.
It's a very important nuance, that, isn't it, Steve? Because particularly young men get caught up in this all the time. They see what is a at least in terms of persona, a very feminine, almost, you know, fairy-like woman, and they don't see the character armor. They don't see the masculinization of the woman, because it doesn't show on the surface. It's an internal construct. And I think a lot of men get taken by surprise when they engage with that, and they suddenly realize that the woman is like steel on the inside, and is cold and unrelating, and so on and so forth. So it's a lesson not to just purely go on persona, isn't it, on what you can see, in terms of if it's a young man looking at a young woman in terms of her apparent physical attractiveness. I mean, it is literally besides the point in many ways.
So much pain comes from relating and getting it wrong, doesn't it? It really does. And the fact that Darwin pushes past everybody to try to get Freud home, if you see what I mean, just at that most fundamental level. People can make mistakes.
Well, like you say, or you often says about Darwin being cruel. Darwin would just want them to get together and reproduce. It really wouldn't. It just, anything over and above that is irrelevant. In a Darwinian sense.
He'd also want the young man, if necessary, to overcome the power of the father to prove his reproductive fitness. And part of the father's motives, unconsciously to him, will be to provide the Darwinian stress test to win the daughter, and therefore he then will be investing in his grandchildren through that other man, that young man. But if the young man's not up to it, then Darwin acts through him. There's all of that going on. It's a very complicated setup, isn't it? Very, very complicated. And then Darwin will repeatedly challenge a couple through their life together, because the street of life has many houses and lots of people live in them, and lots of opportunities to refresh the browser, should we put it, in that sort of way. And Darwin will always take an opportunity to do that, unless Plato is instantiated sufficiently to decline the intrusion, put it that way. I think that's probably the best way to put it. And that's something for downstream of a young couple, that those challenges will come. and it's like, what do they do about it? It's one of those unspoken things, isn't it, really, that it's almost romantic to say these two should be together and they must pass that. That's great, but sustenance of that relationship over time means it will be pressure tested, because Darwin creeps up on people and tests them again. If Plato's in place, then Darwin can be satisfied within the relationship. If not, then any relationship is one amongst any other number of them, of potential relationships.
So safely satisfied, really.
Yes, satiated.
Yes, no, safely satisfied.
Oh, safely satisfied,
in the sense of whatever then happens as a result of Darwin can safely be contained within that relationship.
Yeah.
Whether or not the couple concerned consciously decided to, say, follow a reproductive path or not. And obviously sometimes couples just find themselves in a situation where that happens. Yeah. But if the Platonic is present within that relationship, then the chances are, whether they had intended or not, say, to have children, can still be accommodated for that reason.
Oh yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
Yes, yeah. But yes, because Plato can step over Darwin.
Yes.
The Darwinian pressure is highest when people are young, obviously, because of the reproductive window optimized for that. But it morphs into something later, and people get challenged in a different way. And I'm saying this not to make a value judgment at all, but to say the kind of people who come to us and suffer at different stages of their life from how relationships can break down without understanding the progression of the challenge. They can start out with a really great relationship at the beginning, but Plato might start to fade away because of other distractions, and that's an opportunity for Darwin to present a challenge in the form of a third party, one or more. And depending on how people have lived their life up to the point where they meet, making no judgment about how that's happened, but depending upon that will depend upon how a downstream challenge is accepted or rejected from outside of that relationship. I know some people who have gone through a lot of relationships before they settle down, and then they regard any third party interaction they may have as, that's just one more. It doesn't mean anything at a Platonic level. I've got the Platonic within, say, the marriage, but I had experiences before, and it doesn't mean anything to have another one again. And for some people that's acceptable, and for others it's not. But that's a pressure that can emerge along the street of life. And it depends upon the robustness or the flexibility on the opposite side of it, of that relationship, about how it can deal with these things. But when it doesn't work, that's when people turn up for relationship therapy. You might find that they've had an idyllic beginning to a relationship, but then it flatlined out and growth stopped, and the only solution seemed to be Freud from outside. So helping people get through that, because the pain of that can be tragic for people when they've committed to themselves at a Platonic level to a relationship. So there's so much to consider for people like us, because we're supposed to be psychotherapists. We're going to have to work with people through different stages of their life. Difficulty at the beginning for everyone, but it gets difficult in different ways sometimes later on. I mean, not everyone is challenged that way, but probably a lot are, and more than once. But what do we do about that as professionals?
Well, you don't ask people how they feel and hand them a box of tissues. That's
no,
for
you
sure.
Certainly do not. No. The thing is, beneath the pain, which is very real and very emotional for people, there are instinctive needs which operate at a Freudian level, but then there's the Platonic as well. And the only way you're going to heal a Freudian wound is through the Platonic. If the Freudian intercession into that relationship has been harmful, it can't be changed. So you have to go to a different register to bring about healing, because you can't override it. If somebody hurts more from that than the other party, then the hurt is at the Platonic level. That's where we have to go to bring a transcendent aspect into that relationship to healing. You know, if one party says, well, I've had so many relationships, what does one more matter? It didn't mean anything. But the other person may say, it did mean something for me. I made a lifelong commitment. They're telling you that the wound, more than anything, is at the platonic rather than the physical level. And the mismatch between the two is something that can cause the disturbances in that relationship. And if there's a chance of healing, you're going to have to wind the clock back to this scenario where a choice was made for two people to commit themselves. That way, some healing can come through at the Freudian level from the platonic. But otherwise, it's lots of tears and crying, accusations, cognitive collapses, all that stuff that you get in normal marriage guidance, marriage or relationship therapy, which can often split people. Whereas our approach has always been to, if possible, work with both people together and to work on the transpersonal elements that can be the only level at which healing can occur. If somebody feels betrayed at a physical level, Freudian level, then that is something that does not go away. Within level, we have to find another level to make that change stick. So there's a lot in this, and there's a lot of implications really for it. Depending on what we can cover tomorrow, I think you
might have just done it.
Oh, we might have done. Yeah, we might have done.
Yeah.
There's a lot in it.
Yes.
Anybody like to make any observations or comments on this or anything else?
Yes, Steve.
Yeah.
Could you please just go a little bit more on what you said when the wound is on the platonic level, and then you said we have to wind the clock back. I didn't quite understand the picture in there. I did up to that point, but
yeah. So I'm taking an idealist position here, because the way people form relationships come from many different angles and configurations of experience and expectation. But if there's been an idealistic romantic relationship from the beginning that was exclusive from the start, and that then has a third party intrude into that relationship at a Freudian level, then the wound for the other party to the relationship is felt more at a platonic level, at a transpersonal level, than it is at a physical level, because they shared everything with that one person. So though the means, pardon the expression, of entry, if you like, or ingression was Freudian, the injury is platonic. It's at the spiritual level. That's where people feel it when there's that configuration. So rather than focus on the physical infidelity, it's the betrayal of the platonic that is felt decisively. Where people can get over the physical side of it, the platonic has to be healed. Anyway, that's the thing that won't ever go away unless it's addressed. Some people can forgive physical infidelity, but they talk loosely about trust has been violated, or I'll never feel the same again, or whatever. Well, where are those feelings coming from? If it's not coming from just a brief encounter or physical indiscretion or whatever it might be, or an infatuation that went too far, then it's hit them at the platonic level, and that's the level where the healing must take place. But there are people who can bear all of that because there's enough of a relationship, which means that things like that don't disturb them at a platonic level. They've had experiences with lots of different relationships. They came together in understanding of that. So the ground state for building the relationship was okay about that. So there's almost no platonic insult. Then you see those people feeling it at a Freudian level, like, why did you have to do that? Whereas the person who's got, in other words, why did you feel the need for physical gratification in that way, or emotional, and the emotional then is moving towards the platonic, then those questions need to be answered in that way. And very often they can be sorted out because it can be reduced to meaning nothing. And therefore it's not a betrayal because it didn't mean anything. And a lot of people will say that. In my experience, when it comes to couples who've gone through things like this, but with an idealized starting point. You're kind of starting with what Jungians understand to be archetypes. And in that sense, then, the pressure is much higher within the relationship to keep it together. And that draws, it seems, a good platonic relationship draws wolves, I'll call them that, for want of a, I was going to say ingressors or interlopers, but it draws predators. That's almost Darwin, again, trying to say, let's break the sanctity of this relationship and bring an intruder in. And there are lots of women who feel that way about men. They're jealous of the woman who has the man, and they want to use their sexuality physically and their emotional bridge to connect in and to break the vessel. That's almost more important to them than continuing a relationship with the man after that. They want to break that down. They want to take that man off that other woman of whom they are jealous of, or they feel jealousy towards. That's almost as if they've been possessed, if you like. And I don't like to use that term, but I'm speaking in a Jungian way. By the compensatory drive from Freud to break the hold of Plato. And
that makes you very powerful, doesn't it?
It does, which brings Arga online immediately. And then it can become a habit which determines the woman's behavior in life, that she's a serial interloper into other women's lives. So that can happen. And men act in a similar way, that they will see a happy relationship, and that woman then is a high value target for a predatory male, because she's almost got, even though she's had a relationship, it's almost as if she's virginal outside of that relationship. So if he can break in, that makes him very powerful. And then he uses the woman as used toilet paper, and at the same time he's reduced the status of the man, which makes him instinctively at that level elevated and powerful. So the motivation is going to be expressed through Darwin at a Freudian level in both cases, and Adler then comes online as well because they've attacked Jung. If we think about it, the Freud-Adler-Jung equation, they've ruined the sanctity at that alchemical vessel level that Jungians would talk about. That's been broken. The vessel has been broken by an intrusion. But with other configurations, that doesn't matter, because it can be dealt with at a different level that the couple are happy with. It was just a physical thing. It didn't mean anything. I've heard so many men say that. I've heard a few women too say that kind of thing. And provided that's accepted by the partner, then it's just part of the journey of life. But basically speaking, the more integrated a couple appear to be, the more they're going to be targeted. It's an odd thing. It's not like they're left alone. The attack, if you like, the intrusion will come on both partners from various people at various adaptive times. There's something catabolic about that. It's like, let's see if we can break this. Let's see if we can shatter this. It's not nice when you see that happening, because the pain when it hits a platonic level is astronomical, because it's felt at a spiritual level. And I'd say that's a difficult thing for people to refer to. But others deal with it very, very well, because they dismiss it as being only Freudian, and we can get past this. Just don't do it again, kind of thing. But you see that kind of thing happening. But those two, if they get together, this is the beginning of the journey. And what will happen thereafter awaits them in the street, in those houses. We have to look deeper with therapists and most people.
Thanks, Steve. That was a lot of nuance there that we need to address at which level is the wound exactly. And so if I understood that, if it is at a platonic level, so it could involve the concepts of trust and commitment and everything, then if the damage is only localized to the Freudian, it can provide healing, if I understood you, because there is no implied meaning in the action.
Yes, if people share a platonic beginning to a relationship which is transcendent, and meaning is the principal thing that's guiding them, even more than the physical side of it. And I don't mean to reject the physical, because in the ideal state you get both. If that's the case, then it's the platonic that is hurt more than the physical. The physical's been the means for the betrayal, but it's the emotional, but it's the platonic impact of that which has meant that everything that went before up to that point in terms of attachment in the relationship has been undermined through that betrayal or perceived betrayal. But if they can get back to the platonic state, then even that can be healed, because that's where the wound is operating. So you go to the place where it's operating. Now, again, with where there's been a Freudian betrayal, then if that can be relativized within the vessel of the relationship, so it's like, well, this is what happens, this is what people do, you've got the rest of your life ahead of you, you've got children, you've got all these things that you share, that relativizes the insult, if you like, I'll call it that, at that level, because they never started from a platonic. And lots of relationships are like that. They're more like what we call like a contractual
Yes.
thing based on resources. So, and the both partners might be very experienced, so it's almost nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, we know people who live a life like that. I mean, friends, I'll just say the first name, Mary.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Who has navigated her way through life, gratifying herself in a way which is almost friendly, friendly towards whoever she wants to, if she can.
Certainly friendly.
She's very friendly, and I used to think, God, your poor husband, long-suffering husband, who's fairly well off and has provided very well for her, but they're adapted.
Yeah.
And they totally accept one another. He knows what he couldn't avoid knowing what she's like. She doesn't hide it. Doesn't humiliate him to his face. She's good enough to do it behind his back, but he does know. And they've got a level of adaptation that suits one another, and they don't feel hurt.
So maybe it was never a platonic relationship.
I don't think it was. No, it was more a convenience between two people.
Yeah.
Where the economic side and then the child that they have and that kind of thing all just unfolded. And for her in particular, every day is an adventure. And relating for her is intimacy of an emotional and a physical kind that she will indulge herself in if the opportunity arises. But she's always back with her husband, and they're happy with that. And so in that sense, okay, they've resolved it. I mean, we've known him a long time,
yes,
probably 35 years at least now. And he's certainly come to accept it if he didn't at the beginning, because they're still together. So there's lots of ways that things can figure. But when you see the pain of people who have had that platonic relationship intruded upon, that is very, 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 very sad to see that collapse. And then there has to be a reality testing about, well, what do you want to do about this? If you can both reattain that, then there's healing. But if you can't, then maybe you're better off apart. I would never say that to anyone, never have, but better off apart, because then you have a chance of building an alternative kind of relationship, which is fulfilling in whatever way you may need. So the reason I picked this is that it's archetypal, in that sense, but that brings all of the challenges cascading towards it. And only people who start on that way will get the repeated, it seems, attempts to break it. Because the woman I just mentioned, there's lots of intruders, been lots of them, that she basically throws the fishing net out and drags them in, but it hasn't damaged the vessel of the marriage at all. They're both parties are comfortable with it. But she gets a lot of her platonic relationship outside with other people, some of whom succumb to her advances and some of whom do not. But she gets the spiritual side of things, all of that. And there was others, there's that nurse,
yes, a bit like Jung again, in a way, because sometimes it's almost as if the more comfortable somebody is, the freer they are to have a dalliance here and there. And so, yes, as you say, there's quite a number of women that we know. But also, too, if you're working, say, with a couple like that in therapy, you end up not so much working with transference of projection, but going back to what actually brought them together in the first place, which, of course, is the Platonic ideal and the instantiation of the Platonic in the other.
Where that was there at the beginning.
Where that was there at the beginning, of course. Yes. But what I'm saying is you tend not to get bogged down so much with working through the detail of transference of projection as you might do with a couple who are configured differently, with respect to their relationship. But that, I think it's often helpful to go back to the beginning and to actually encourage people to ask themselves what it was that brought them together in the first place. It's a good prompt for getting into the Platonic, isn't it?
It is. So this image really was about the beginning of a journey where, first of all, you have to differentiate out from the Platonic field that which is behind Freud and Adler, and it is really the ideal state to start a relationship, and then it's down to them. If he succeeds in taking the girl away from the control of the father positively, and they enter the street of life, then all those other challenges will back up. But it seems that the tighter, the most closely related a couple can be, the more likely that incites intruders or potential intruders. And that will continue, because that woman I mentioned earlier is probably 75 now.
Yeah, she's in her 70s.
She'd be about that, because she's the same age as my brother, 75, come up to 76. And I don't think she's changed even at that age. She's an original hippie and behaved that way then, and has never stopped. But her husband knows that.
Well, at one level, it's his choice to stay, isn't it?
Yes.
It'd be very easy to paint him as a victim.
It would, yeah.
Maybe too easy.
Yeah, he seems to be content enough. In his life.
Could I just ask what would attract then? Is that a power drive, the outside intrusion into a unified couple? What would be the driving?
Well, the power drive is a source of gratification, but the gratification is not in the power; it's in the fuel for the power, which is Freud. It's particularly in cases like this. So they break the sanctity of the relationship at a Freudian level and at an Adlerian level, and they get off on it. And like you said, Paul, dark triad people, it's very easy to see it in them. But there's something so fundamental about this that even people who aren't dark triads might find themselves being tempted into being the interloper. Because
you just see it more clearly in the extremes, don't you?
You do, because their basic nature is that way inclined. But ordinary people get involved in entanglements where they feel I'll take this person out of that relationship and I'll have them, and then when they can and they've broke, they think I don't want them. Why did I ever want them? And I've brought this about. There's nothing Platonic in it for that person, but it happens over and over again. That it's almost as if there's something of high value in the relationship, and that Darwin says take it. Take it, improve your own fitness, reproductive or socially, whatever it might be. And then ordinary people get embroiled in doing that. But I've noticed some women in particular can be so ruthless about doing this kind of thing and looking a woman square in the face, who may be a friend or a family member, and without blinking or showing anything, they are plotting the downfall of that relationship. It's incredible.
I've seen it myself in a few women with their best friends. Incredibly.
It's the journey of life, isn't it? And we need to, as therapists, to be prepared for different people at different stages, different configurations, but the fundamentals are there for everyone. Plato's either played a role or not. Darwin, Freud will always have something, pardon the expression, in it, even if it's only as a drive. Some things don't become physical. They become more of a Jungian fantasy where it's dallied with, but it doesn't go to a Freudian conclusion. But there is still a sense of betrayal felt by the other party, because what's shared is emotional and it's infatuating and involves what Jungians think of as anima or animus projections and transferences. And when that happens, the partner of the original relationship must be devalued. They must be robbed of whatever quality they had at the beginning. That must be taken from them and transferred onto the interloper, so that the interloper then becomes as if part of the history of that person's life. Like, I've always known you, and I just need to change a few things, and then you can have everything. You can have everything that was positive in my partner, and you have the other things that he or she hasn't got. And that becomes part of the fantasy of the plotting that goes on when they start to feel directed towards targeting someone. And the other partner may know nothing about it, and it comes as a hell of a shock. I saw that happen with a police colleague. I'd long gone from the police. This was about 20 years ago. I'd been long gone. And I remember speaking to a colleague I knew. He said he was utterly stunned. He had no idea. He'd had children with this woman, who was a former policewoman, and everything seemed absolutely fine. But she gutted his life entirely, left him, and he had to rebuild his life. And that was, you see this obviously happening all the time. But the shock to him being unconscious, he'd invested everything in this woman that he'd known since, I think she would be about 16, 17, because they were both cadets together. And the shock was awful. And I didn't work with him. It was through a third party who told me about it. And I knew them. I knew all the parties concerned. And of course, you then refer back to your clinical experience, and I thought, that guy's going to be going through absolute hell, because he was stunned. There were no obvious signs, and of course, men act in the same way, can do and do. Just so happens that the configuration there was a woman who did that. She went on to marry this other guy, and had more children. So it's a tragedy. So this is the beginning, and the end is already anticipated teleologically. The configuration of how this will unfold to it, this relationship is forming in the image to its conclusion, is already present. That's the great sadness of it all. But there are people who can deal with these incidents. There are people who are strong enough within, and I don't mean that in an aggressive, hard way, but strong enough in soul that they can engage with this process and work it through. They do exist, because what they had at the beginning here was worth navigating everything that happened thereafter. That's a good thing when they can do it. So many different nuances. But really the point of this was, because we were talking about anima-animus relationships, then this was an aspect of it, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Just as we did ones that focused on the mother's role.
Yeah.
But there's so many other angles on it, isn't there? You've gone forever.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're certainly finding that, aren't we?
We are.
We've set about on this course, and that seems to be what happens, because, as I say, it's to some extent, when you put the cards together, you're having your own interpretation of things already, aren't you? But then once it's out there, once it's kind of autonomous, the image, you can see just how it draws different perspectives out in different people, which inevitably it will, because it is a projective medium. But that's a good thing.
Yes. Yeah, because these interpretations, the things that we either collapse into or we adjust immediately that we should adjust, because that becomes a moving image. And when it does, everything changes. If that were to articulate, we'd move on beyond this single frame, and then perspective changes. And when we work with people, it's like that. We have a presentation, and then the development of that over time.
Yeah. So you could utilize something like this as a prompt. I mean, you could utilize it in hypnosis. There's so many ways that you could utilize it. Yeah.
I mean, from this, if you were inclined, and it's going back to John, because John and I were talking about not John, Mladen, beg your pardon, John. We're talking about hypnosis. you could do exactly what you've said here, and you can run that kind of experiment, but non-cognitively,
Yes.
and see what animates the image.
Yeah.
And then you find those deep infodynamics at a Platonic field level that have configured everything anyway.
Yeah.
They respond to your approach.
Yeah. It's a great way of bypassing cognition, isn't it?
That's fabulous. Yeah. It's and on another angle on that, that's why we've said that Michael Levin, to make progress further than is already great progress, really needs to understand how to communicate with different things, different, he calls them minds, levels of cognition, he calls it. He doesn't say consciousness. He's very careful about his use of language, but to get beyond where he's already got, to substantively access it, you have to do this. You have to work with representation, because every representation has been made before we experience it by something. And once we experience it, it takes us somewhere else, and we're going into deeper and deeper representations. And our position is that ultimately we'll be able to receive the Platonic field as it is, with its proper understanding of itself and its perspective on us, whoever we might be as individuals. Once we've got that, then we are in the unconscious to a depth which Jungians talk about but never achieve, because their method gets in the way of them accessing it. It's too fantastical and too cognitive. It collapses. It's unnatural. So if you follow a natural process, then you can get into things, but you have to work with the representation. There's two key things: dissociation, representation. We can't dissociate, we can't receive. Once we receive, we have to work with what we receive. What we receive is a representation, work with it, and then it unfolds and unfolds and unfolds. And then we are updating our consciousness as a result. Yeah. Oh, well.